Are you going to see an inflection point when it comes to the story of science and suddenly open up to the possibilities of science fiction?
I think it's a very real possibility. We saw such an inflection point at the beginning of the 20th century with the quantum revolution, when we discovered quantum mechanics, and then a whole set of technologies emerged very rapidly, without which the world that we live in today would not be possible. None of this would be possible without the quantum technologies. We may be on the cusp of a new inflection point. We could see AI, we could see quantum computing, we could see nuclear fusion, we could see incredible advances in space travel and whatnot. All of this could suddenly be triggered off in this decade, possibly. So the US government recently announced, held some kind of a disclosure kind of event in which a number of former US government personnel came out in public and testified on record that the US government is in possession of various alien artifacts and also non-human biologics. That's the kind of term that they used.
Abhijit Chavda explaining quantum computing to us. People talk about AI in the modern day. What people fail to understand is that this is one of the most key technologies for our next 2 or 3 decades. This is one of those episodes where we'll talk about the ABCs of computing, how computers work, the engineering behind computers, and then we'll build up to explain what quantum computers are, what quantum computing is going to become in the long term. This episode has definitely been made from a place of ego, because on my series with the cabinet ministers, I had an episode with Rajiv Chandrasekhar sir. There was a time constraint when we were recording that episode. So I rushed through my process of explaining what quantum computing is. I believe I have a fair layman's understanding of what this very, very complex topic is. I definitely messed up a few sentences because I was rushing my explanation. I said that computers are capable of creating atoms and molecules. I'm an engineering grad. Of course, I know that computers don't work that way. What I was trying to say is that computers are going to become so powerful that they'll be able to simulate the creation of atoms and molecules within the computer. Now, what do I mean by this word simulation? To understand this and more, we have the TRS legend, Abhijit Chavda. He's back on the show today. I'm not going to expand much more on this intro. Enjoy today's episode of TRS, where we deep dive into one of the most important technologies that mankind is ever going to build. It's a science special. It's a future special. It's an ACXRA special. Let's go, baby. AC is back. We're going to be learning about a new concept today. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. I have to grab the bull by its balls, not the horns.
Okay, that's great.
And the bull is myself. So the way I'm going to grab myself is by addressing the fact that when we spoke to the Minister of State for Technology, Rajiv Chandrasekhar sir, there was a part in that podcast where I spoke about quantum computing. And I tried explaining it to the best of my abilities. There was a line that I said in that podcast. I said something like, at some point, these computers will be capable of creating atoms and molecules. Now, the criticism I got for that particular piece was that, he thinks a computer can create atoms and molecules. Now, obviously, the context was missing there. It was a grammatical mistake. I meant to say it can simulate atoms and molecules, which for anyone listening to the entire podcast without a bias, they would have got the point. And in saying that, I think the fault still lies with me because I've not understood the depths of the subject. I have understood it from a science fiction perspective, and this entire show is all about learning. I am also learning as we go forward in the show. I don't think I would know anything about geopolitics if I hadn't met you in life. And you introduced me to the subject of it a few years ago. You introduced me to the subject of geopolitics a few years ago. I've learned about technology through you. And I would want to learn about what people call the next big technological revolution, which is quantum computing, from you. Have you seen that podcast by any chance, the Rajiv Chandrasekhar podcast?
I haven't thus far.
Okay. So he highlighted 2 or 3 very key areas for technological advancement. The first was gaming. The second was semiconductors.
Yes.
And the third was quantum computing. We spoke a little bit about AI, but I think AI has been spoken about a lot on the show and generally in the podcasting world. Quantum computing is possibly going to be bigger and more impactful than artificial intelligence. But very few people understand the true meaning of quantum computing other than actual computer engineers and computer scientists. So this is a podcast for the 12 and 13-year-olds out there, including myself. So firstly, apologies for the wrong explanations. Secondly, this whole podcast is a learning process. Here we go. Fabrizio Romano reference. Let's go, sir.
So quantum computing. So first of all, to understand what is quantum computing, we need some reference points. So let's first understand what is regular computing. What's a computer? What does it do? So a computer is a thinking machine, so to say. And people have always wanted to create a machine that can think for them. So that's something that people have thought about and tried to construct for centuries, maybe millennia. You had the Greek Antikythera mechanism that was, I don't know how many, maybe 2000 years old or roughly something like that. It's a mechanism that has, gears and wheels and all that stuff, which kind of output certain dates and certain celestial events which will happen in the future, that sort of thing. So it's a predictive machine that the ancient Greeks had created. Then in the 18th and 19th century, people started constructing mechanical calculators that could do massive calculations to a certain extent. But once again, these were mechanical machines and they were not really thinking machines. They were simply machines that would output certain things based on what input you gave them. But there was no thinking ability in there. Then the scientist, what's his name, von Neumann, he came up with the first model of what an actual thinking machine would look like and what its components would be. And that's why all computers that we use today are essentially von Neumann machines. So in an actual thinking machine, you would have different sections. One would be the memory, one would be the arithmetic and logic unit. You would have registers, you would have random access memory, you would have pages, and a variety of components. And all of that would enable you to give any task to the machine and it would do it for you. So you could not only ask it to do certain predefined tasks, but you could create new tasks, imagine new tasks, and program those tasks into the computer using the computer's own binary code, essentially ones and zeros, and the computer would do the programming about the processing for you and give you an output. So what is binary code? So it's ones and zeros. So that's essentially what computers understand. So let's say you have a voltage of 5 volts and you have a voltage of 0 volts. Let's consider the 5 volt voltage as 1 and the 0 volt voltage as 0, and then you apply Boolean logic to it, binary logic, which is the AND operation, the and, not, nor, XOR, all those operations. You must remember that from engineering.
Yes,
right?
My God. Okay, let me break this down a little bit for the non-engineering students. What we enter into any computer, when we interact with the computer engineers have devised a way to make that process very easy for us. All we have to do is use a mouse, press keys. It gets entered into that machine. But what's happening within the machine is that there is electronics at play. What you are entering within that machine is becoming electrical signals. Talking about a voltage of 1 is...
Let's say 5 volts.
Yeah,
that's
5
1.
volts.
We call that 1.
And a voltage of 0 would be...
Is a 0.
0 volts.
Yeah. So that's the binary.
This is how a machine interacts with humans. When you want to transfer data, an A key that you press on your keyboard goes inside as a signal that, hey, the human has pressed A. And the machinery of the computer changes it to a combination of ones and zeros. Now, these combinations of ones and zeros make an AND, make a NOR, make a OR. All that is computer programming related. Basically, all you need to understand is anything that you interact with in a computer, the computer reads as a combination of ones and zeros. And there can be a huge number of combinations of these ones and zeros. For example, 100. 101, 110, 001. That's a set of combinations. Now, if you go into 4 digits, 5 digits, the combination possibilities become a lot more. Is this a fair explanation?
Yeah, it is a very fair explanation. Yes.
Okay. Would you like to add anything to my explanation?
So what happens is that So we have ones and zeros, and you use logic gates and logic operations. So like the truth tables that we spoke about. So that's how they and then there is the arithmetic and logic unit. There are adders in there and all that, and then you have register sizes which define how large each operation can be. And then you have something called the ASCII code, in which every letter of the alphabet and other symbols are represented as strings of ones and zeros. So once you, let's say, like you said, when you press A, it's going to give the computer a whole bunch of a string of ones and zeros, which it will understand as representing the letter A. By its logic and things like that. So you have the very basic level, which is the ones and zeros level of the computer. Then you go one step higher. You have, I think it's called a machine language, which is a slightly one level of abstraction higher, in which you can actually do some coding in a certain in a higher kind of language, and that is then interpreted as ones and zeros, and that's what the computer understands. So, like you said, let's say you have a cell phone. Okay, which is a computer. It has a microprocessor inside. It's a computer, and you want to send a text message or an email. So the interface of the computer makes it very simple to us. It's got some icons. You press the email icon, and it'll open your email account. You type some stuff inside, and you send it. But the actual operations that are happening inside are all you're toggling voltages. You're making them 1 and 0, and there's a whole string of logic operations that's happening, and that's what ends up sending your email. But if you had to do it, if you had to toggle those voltages by hand, you would end up never sending the email. So what you see is many levels of abstraction higher, and that's what makes it easy for you to use a computer. But at the heart of a computer, you have ones and zeros and all these logic gates, and you have tremendous amounts of circuits that are built on top of chips. So initially, what you did for logic operations, what you had vacuum tubes. So a vacuum tube would be either on or off or something like that, and that would give the computer the idea of a 1 and 0.
Wow.
Yeah. So initially, the computers were enormous because each address of the register would be one vacuum tube and things like that.
Damn.
Yeah. So you had enormous buildings and enormous rooms that would be just one computer, and the computing power would be like today's calculators, or maybe even less than that. So that was the beginning of the computer age, the actual von Neumann machines that could be programmed to do anything. And how did you enter programs into these computers? You used those cards, what perforated cards, or something that's no longer used now, but you use those cards that you input into that, and the computer would have a machine, the card reader machine, that would read those perforations as instructions, and then it would do the computing and throw out another card for you that you would have to reverse interpret as the result that you wanted.
I believe there was a scientist who predicted that the processing power of computers will keep increasing with time. Moore's law. What is the law?
It says that every 2 years or something, the processing power doubles that we have in existence. I think it was every 2 years or every certain amount of time, the processing power will keep on doubling. And the essentially the processing power on a certain amount of chip size would double.
Which means chips will keep getting smaller.
Chips will keep getting denser and smaller as well. So if you have a 1 centimeter square chip, which has a certain amount of processing power, in, let's say, 2 years, it's going to double. The same size. That sort of thing.
Why? Why does the processing power increase with time?
Because of advances in technology. So miniaturization. So what you do is you take a piece of silicon wafer, and you etch circuits on top of that. These are your logic gates and all that, your logic operations, the arithmetic and logic unit, the memory, the registers, the various addresses and things like that. You have a grid structure, and you can have pins on each of these things, and that accesses the memory. And then you have various specialized parts of the chip, some of which will be GPU, some of which will be a CPU and things like that. It's a very complicated thing. But overall, what you do is you etch these enormous circuits on very tiny silicon wafers. And that is done by the process of very large scale integration, VLSI. And it's a two-dimensional surface on which you etch all this. It is done using something called photolithographic machines. And over time, you are able to improve the technology, so you can squeeze more and more circuits into smaller and smaller regions of areas.
I've not heard the terms VLSI since engineering college, and my trauma is coming back to me a little bit. But we'll come back to the conversation. Right. Basically, how you spoke about the older computers using vacuum tubes in a rudimentary way to transfer the ones and zeros to the computer. Now that same process is being done in a very tiny space.
Yes.
It's being done in such an advanced way that some of it is not even visible to the human eye. That's how
right.
small things are getting.
Yes, microscopic essentially.
What's going to happen in 10 to 20 years then?
So eventually we're going to reach the limit of how much circuitry we can squeeze into a certain square area, a certain unit area of a silicon wafer. Eventually we're going to not be able to, because eventually we're going to go down to the atomic level, right? And then what do? Then we reach a fundamental barrier. You can't have anything smaller than an atom. So then how do we make a computer more powerful? That is the question that will eventually arise. We are still at a stage where we can still squeeze more circuitry into a smaller area, or maybe we can stack circuits on top of each other if we can take care of the heating problem and all that. That may be resolved, but eventually we're going to run into the question of how much smaller can we make it. We can't make anything smaller than an atom. And then the question is, what do we do next? Right? And that's where the idea of manipulating individual atoms themselves came up. And to understand, that's where quantum computing comes in. And to understand that, we have to understand a couple of quantum mechanics concepts that are very weird. One is the concept of superposition, quantum superposition, and the other is the concept of quantum entanglement.
Let's understand quantum mechanics a little bit as a subject in the first place. We did an episode on Oppenheimer and nuclear physics. The quantum world is the atomic world, the subatomic world.
Yeah.
Which means that if anyone's seen Ant-Man, how Ant-Man's a big human and then you can shrink him to the size of him being the size of atoms.
Okay.
Now, if you're actually able to do that to a human, when you shrink that human where he can actually see electrons as a globe in front of him, and he can see a massive nucleus as a globe in front of him, the physics of that world is very different from the physics of the world that we are used to. Where if I pick up this bell and keep it down on the table, there's gravity at play. There is a vacuum at play. There is sound waves at play. All these are down to physics. But in the quantum world, the laws of physics change.
Absolutely. Totally.
I think what scientists have not been able to understand is why the laws of physics change. That's the big question. Am I right?
Yes.
There's no explanation.
Right now, we don't have any. We don't understand why it is the way it is, but we know how it is.
That's why you answer with the universe created it that way, or the God created it that way.
Somebody programmed it that way.
Yeah, it just works like that.
Yeah.
We know for sure that the physics of that world is different.
Yes.
Okay, now there's too many mysteries also attached to the quantum world, which is what people hope that maybe quantum computing might help us solve. Before we actually enter this conceptual conversation again, maybe to make the listeners understand quantum computing better, say tomorrow quantum computing is perfected. Mm-hmm. We understand the technology fully. Why don't you run us through some of the applications of quantum computing and how it's going to change human life? And this is in the 2030s or 40s. It's predicted to happen by then. Go on, sir.
So there are certain operations that if you would ask a regular computer to do, it would take it maybe thousands of years. Because see, when you in a regular computer, you have CPUs, you have GPUs, you have microprocessors, you have multiple cores that work at the same time. Let's say you have a quad core computer. I think it's an ancient term, but let's say you have 16 cores, 32 cores. In a supercomputer, you may have thousands of cores working at the same time, which means that you have lots of computations happening at the same time. And yet it's not going to be enough because there are certain operations that will not work with that. So if you want to optimize a database and if you want to run through the database in a certain optimized manner, it will take too long, and various mathematical problems like calculating prime numbers, etc., can take too long. And prime numbers are very important in cryptography and things like that, which is a very real world thing. So there are certain operations, certain computations that will just take too long. But if you have a quantum computer, you can do those operations in a matter of minutes, maybe even in a matter of seconds. So that's where quantum computers in certain applications of computing can vastly outperform a standard regular computer, even a massive supercomputer like the top 10 supercomputers. It will still outperform that. So that's why the world is focusing on quantum computing now, and it is possible that quantum computers may crack any kind of cryptographic algorithm, any kind of cryptographic algorithm or crypto encryption. So you may be able to break any encryption, no matter how powerful it is, and things like that. You may be able to hack into any application, and the possibilities are essentially infinite.
Yeah. To understand the same point about possibilities and applications further, I want to tell people that all of biology is chemistry, all of chemistry is physics, and all of physics is mathematics. And I learned this line from you. You said mathematics is the language of the universe.
Yes.
Which means that even when you look at colors, when you look at shapes, it's actually mathematics at play. Now, the mathematics of the universe is so complex that it's beyond the human mind. You can understand how much mathematics is around you, which is why mathematicians are a rare breed in the first place, I assume. Now, here you have a machine that's way more powerful than any mathematician that the world has ever seen. It's way more powerful than any computer of the past. Effectively, you might be able to simulate a universe within that computer.
One of the applications of supercomputing today is weather modeling, weather prediction. And it's really hard to predict weather beyond a few days, and it's even hard to predict the kind of weather you will have tomorrow. But if you have a quantum computer, it could make the job much easier to predict the extremely complex weather patterns of the planet Earth. And the other thing, like you mentioned, is, let's say you want to simulate the birth of the universe, or you want to simulate the evolution of a galaxy based on just a collection of dust that you give a certain number, certain set of properties, and you see how it evolves over time. So that takes an enormous amount of computing power that you only can use supercomputers for, and that even then it takes a lot of time to compute that. But in a quantum computer, it may happen. It will definitely be able to. We'll be able to do it much faster. And like you said, we'll be able to simulate universes, tiny universes, toy universes, baby universes. But that's the first step. So the initial quantum computers will be able to simulate a universe of a certain size. But eventually, if you have a large enough quantum computer with enough sufficient power, you may be able to create entire universes within that. And another thing that we cannot simulate on regular computers is quantum mechanics itself. Chemical reactions, the way different molecules interact with each other, how will a protein molecule react under certain conditions, and things like that. So you could actually be able to discover new drugs based using quantum computers, and you will be able to even see the kind of reactions these drugs will have on various kinds of people and things like that. So lots of applications are out there which we currently cannot do using regular computers.
So science will get furthered.
Yes.
Likely engineering will get furthered because science is getting furthered. The moment engineering gets furthered, a lot of human possibilities open up. Better artificial intelligence bots, better application for space travel. There's no limit to what can happen the moment science forwards itself.
Yes.
But what are some industries that will benefit immensely? One that I understand is pharmaceuticals, like medicines.
Yes.
We're going to find the cures possibly for a lot of diseases that we don't know how to cure right now.
Yes.
Cancer, for example.
Yes.
We might be able to find the ultimate cure for cancer through quantum computing.
Yes.
What other industries will heavily benefit from quantum computing?
Quantum computing, definitely cryptography could be, you may be able to create unbreakable encryption, or you may be able to break the most unbreakable encryption. Right now, the jury is still out there, but that's something that could happen. Medicine, healthcare, database searches, simulation of various kinds of phenomena, scientific phenomena, natural phenomena, maybe the prime number, maybe various mathematical problems. So right now, certain industries we can definitely clearly see that they're going to benefit, like the pharmaceutical industry and so on. But there are certain things that are still out there we're not quite sure of. Definitely, scientific research will get a huge impetus with that, especially theoretical physics and quantum physics and all that. Maybe string theory, we'll be able to see whether it works or not. We may be able to simulate various kinds of gravity models, dark matter, dark energy, that sort of thing. But I'm sure we will have lots of practical applications as well. Materials science, we'll be able to discover new materials, ceramics that are heat resistant. For example, we want to build better jet engines that can withstand higher and higher temperatures. The turbine blades need to be able to withstand that. But eventually, the best materials that you have beyond a certain temperature, they're going to disintegrate. So this may be able to help us discover better ceramics and better materials that can withstand incredible temperatures. So this has military applications as well. This has commercial applications. The possibilities are essentially infinite. You could come up with all kinds of new applications that maybe you can't even think of today. So the kind of computational power it will give you is going to open up a whole realm of possibilities.
Yeah. You know how we take social media for granted? Social media exists because of the internet, which exists because of computers, which exist because those vacuum tubes were turned into circuits at some point.
Semiconductors, yes.
Yeah. Back when there were only vacuum tubes which were used in computers, who would have thought that social media and these kind of mental health issues would become a thing eventually?
Indeed.
So you can't actually have hardcore predictions about what quantum computing can lead to. All you can do is turn to the scientists. And when you turn to the scientists and ask them about quantum computing, people, even like Michio Kaku, who's one of the world's most renowned scientists, is extremely excited about it. He says that this is the thing he's the most excited about for the period after his death. I believe he's in his mid-70s or late 70s.
I see.
And he talks about quantum computing with so much excitement because it's going to change the course of humanity. Would you agree?
I do agree, yes. It's going to open up a whole realm of possibilities industrially, in terms of discovering new things, discovering new cures, all the things that we spoke about. It's going to open up lots of possibilities that we don't have today. And in the future, if you are able to fit a quantum computer into a cell phone, just imagine what kind of power it will give you. And obviously, the governments and the militaries will benefit the most from it. They will obviously have their eyes on certain areas and fields in which they would like to utilize this. So yeah, the quantum computing is the next frontier. Every government that matters, every nation that is worth its salt is kind of right now focusing on that. The Americans are doing that. The Chinese are doing that. India, I believe, is also now taking it very seriously. So yeah, a number of nations are going to take the forefront in this, and the nations that achieve leadership in this may actually end up ruling the world in the 21st century.
Okay. It's the era of ChatGPT. One thing I know about technology is that it's always used, researched upon, and developed by governments, possibly at least a decade before it's available for the public. Now, we are so pumped about ChatGPT and everything that it brings to the professional world without really talking about the fact that something like ChatGPT has existed with the world government since a while.
I'm sure it has, but it's never been revealed to us.
So if we're talking about quantum computing coming up in the next 10 years, chances are that a version of it is already being developed or has been developed, likely by China. Now, I don't know how likely it is that it's developed by China or America, but we know it's going to be one of these two. And there is a race to develop quantum computing, because the moment you've developed quantum computing well, you become a force in the world of hacking as well as cybersecurity. You're able to build a very strong armor. No one can hack your computers. And you're able to hack any computer in the world. Because a simple thing like password hacking. Say your password is your birth date. There's a fixed number of birth dates you can possibly have. That's a very easy password to break by, I think it's called
brute force
hacking.
Yes.
Even if your password is complex, a quantum computer can break the most complex password by just doing brute force password
very rapidly.
Yeah, because of the amount it's able to calculate.
Yes.
This is a very dangerous possibility that's coming up. Someone is going to figure quantum computing, and whoever figures it is going to become the most powerful government to ever have existed. Am I right?
Yes, because you'll be able to crack any kind of security. Every nation has extremely secure communications and things like that. And there are various cryptographic algorithms that exist that give you layers of security. If you have a quantum computer, you can break down the most complex encryption just using brute force attacks, because you have the computing power, parallel processing that any supercomputer doesn't have. So yeah, it gives you essentially a superpower that nobody else has. So whoever does this first is going to have a huge amount of headspace, a huge leap forward that it will be very difficult for us to catch up with.
Okay. Who do you think is ahead in the race, according to you? We're entering a world of geopolitics now.
Yeah, I mean, the two nations I can think of at the forefront of this are the US and China. These are the two nations that have the best computers in the world. If you look at supercomputers, the top 100, it's typically the US, China, and Japan. So Japan also is a big force in this. They are an extraordinarily technologically advanced nation. They have some of the best technology in the world. As a society, they are maybe the most high-tech society in the world. So I would say is the US, it's China, it's Japan, maybe South Korea to a certain extent. Maybe Russia may also be involved in this business, in this race to a certain degree. But the forerunners would be the US, China, and Japan. Maybe the US and China. And if I were to compare the US and China, maybe the US may have an advantage, may have a lead over the Chinese. Despite the hype about China making so many advancements, the US has a very robust defense industry. It has an extremely advanced education system, research-based universities. All the universities are fully fledged research institutes. And you have something called DARPA over there, which essentially is a funding agency which identifies people who are doing interesting work, potentially very valuable work. It funds them, gives them 2 or 3 years to try out their concept. Whether it succeeds or fails doesn't matter, but it gives them a limited amount of time and the amount of money that is actually required for the research. So, and the Chinese have tried to copy the DARPA model, and they may have succeeded to a certain extent. So I think overall, if I were to weigh these two nations, I would say the US has an edge, and maybe they may be ahead of China in this matter.
Does India have a DARPA equivalent?
India does not have a DARPA equivalent. We have DRDO, which is nowhere comparable to DARPA. See, DARPA, you know how it is. DARPA has maybe 250 people on its payroll. They are not employees. They are people who it funds. And the funding is given for maybe 2 years, maybe for 3 years. So it's a flat organization, and nobody is actually on its payroll, but it funds various researchers who are doing research in various universities. So the research is done over there. It's not at the DARPA headquarters. In the case of DRDO, so we have maybe 250 people on its payroll, maybe 500 people on its payroll at a given amount of time. And the budget is about $3 to $4 billion per year. DRDO has a budget of maybe $2 billion per year. 2 billion. So it's kind of comparable to DARPA's budget. But DRDO has about 30,000 employees, out of which 5,000 are scientists and 25,000 are non-scientists. So much of the money is being used on God knows what. It is being used to pay the salaries of non-scientists. And even those 5,000 scientists, I'm not sure what they do. There is a very hierarchical structure. DARPA is a completely flat structure. And in the case of DRDO, they are all working at DRDO facilities, and they work for DRDO, and there is management and God knows what. So it's a very different kind of setup in DRDO. And if you see the kind of results that the two organizations throw up, DRDO is not doing bad. It is also giving us good results, good technology, but nothing that is earth-shattering. In the case of DARPA, everything that it produces is earth-shattering. Everything is like a significant leap forward, and much of it is not revealed to the world. Much of it is classified for 20, 30, 40 years.
40 years?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like what technology that we use today would have been classified for 40 years?
For example, stealth technology. It was first revealed around the time of the Gulf War. The first Gulf War, 1991 or thereabouts. But that technology was around for at least 20 years, if not more. The flying wing technology has been around, the concept has existed since the 1940s.
As in quiet Air Force planes?
Yeah, those planes that cannot be detected by radar. They look like flying wings, like bats. You know, the B something bomber that looks like a boomerang? That shape, the black one.
Yeah.
And its various iterations. And nowadays we have fighter planes like the F-22 and the F-35 that also have stealth features, which means that if you shine a radar on it, it won't be detected. Its cross section will be the same as a tennis ball, even though it's that large of an aircraft. So it has certain substances that absorb radar radiation or the photons, and also the angles and all that deflect it in various directions and don't let it go back to the radar machine itself. So the overall cross section that the radar will see is that of a tennis ball or maybe less than that. So it doesn't really turn up on the radar screen unless it's a massive giant radar, in which case it's very hard to pinpoint the location. Okay, so that's how stealth works. And this technology was developed by DARPA. The US military initially was not interested in it, but these guys persisted, and eventually it's what it is today. So now India is trying to develop something similar. It may take time.
Stealth technology,
Stealth fighter. So the next iteration, the fifth generation fighter plane that we are trying to develop right now, the AMCA, Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, which may take its first flight by the end of this decade, will be a fifth generation fighter plane with stealth features.
Damn. Okay. What do you think DARPA is working on right now?
Alien technology, maybe.
Yeah. After this announcement and.
Who knows? Look, there is this place called Area 51 I think it's in Nevada or Colorado, maybe Nevada. It's a fighter plane and aircraft testing facility. It's in the middle of a dried lake and all that. It has hangars that are always shrouded and covered, and we don't know what's inside. So definitely they are testing futuristic aircraft, maybe aircraft that we can't even imagine. Maybe some people say anti-gravity systems and all that. I don't know of any physics that would support anti-gravity theories, but yeah, that's what people speculate. So I think whatever DARPA is doing right now would be at least a generation or two generations ahead of what we think technology is at today. That's what I can say for sure.
Okay. And quantum computing would be a big part of one of these research adventures?
Oh, definitely. See, quantum computing is something that's now out in the public domain. Okay, we have universities that are building quantum computers and actually doing quantum, actual computing. So they have been able to create working quantum computers, build a vacuum inside, isolate actual atoms and manipulate the atoms, place them into superpositions and entangle them and run quantum algorithms on them. So all this has already happened and it's known to the public. So this is the amount of public disclosure that we have. I think there are a couple of US based organizations that have run quantum computations and all on quantum computers. The Chinese are also doing the same thing. So quantum computers are known to the public. It is known that they are, and some, I think it was Microsoft or somebody who announced that they have achieved quantum supremacy, which means that their computational algorithm is superior to that of a classical computer already in certain cases, in certain computations. So it's already gone beyond what a classical computer can do for certain types of calculations, not for everything. So we have the Chinese have announced quantum supremacy. The Americans have also announced quantum supremacy publicly, which means that whatever DARPA is doing is, I would imagine, a generation at least ahead of that, which means that I don't know what exactly it could be, but it could be something way more advanced than what we are seeing right now.
Everything that ChatGPT is doing has been predicted since 2015, that one day there'll be an AI model do this. And then ChatGPT comes out of nowhere, takes over the world, everyone's talking about it, etc. I think we're going to see a moment like that with quantum computing as well. Am I fair in saying something like this? Like a quantum computer will be spoken about, but obviously first will be used geopolitically in some way.
See, what you could do is, if you have a robust quantum computer that can do computations with high fidelity, then you could run an AI on top of that, and then just imagine what it could do, right? AI, artificial, like a chat GPT kind of thing, with the power that a quantum computer has. And if you use that to discover new drugs or to discover new materials or to simulate new kinds of nuclear weapons or fusion reactions or something, that could give you an enormous lead over anybody else. So you take quantum computing and the enormous power it has, the kind of computational power that no other supercomputer has, and you place AI on top of it, AI software on top of it. See, AI is just a bunch of software. That's what it is, right? And the entire data model and all that. You place that on top of a quantum computer, the results could be humongous. So it's something we can only imagine right now, but it could create a multiplicative effect and give the owner of the machine essentially godlike power. Who knows?
Would something like this even be released for the public?
It won't be released for the public.
It's too powerful to put in human beings'
Way
hands.
too powerful.
Okay. And what I understand about technology is that you gradually discover technology. Like how you spoke about how one atom has been simulated inside a quantum computer right now. Am I right?
I'm not sure up to what extent they've gone, but yeah, you can now, I believe, simulate quantum systems, which means atoms and their various quantum states and all that within a quantum computer.
And this was not possible before because modern day average computers are not capable of that level of calculation.
Even a simple atomic system is way too complex for most computers, even supercomputers. The orbital shapes and all those things of a regular atom.
Okay. I think we've almost reached the end of this episode because it's just an explainer episode. But is there any other aspect you'd like to talk about when it comes to quantum computing? Like, what do you really kind of ponder upon in this topic?
Yeah, I think the from my perspective, I'm basically a theoretical physicist. What I'm interested in is understanding the secrets of the universe. What is dark matter? What is dark energy? What is the nature of gravitation? There are so many questions that are unanswered right now. We don't understand 95% of the universe. The 95% of the universe is dark for us. It's so maybe if you could use quantum computing for doing something good and constructive, then you can try and unravel the secrets of the universe. Maybe simulate various kinds of potential universes in a quantum computer and see what kind of results it gives you. That's one possibility that I can think of. The other possibilities are what we discussed: various kinds of applications, drug discovery, and simulation of weather, and cryptography and whatnot. So I think it's definitely going to be something that will revolutionize the world. It won't be apparent to us immediately. It may take 10, 20 years for us to understand what's been going on. Maybe it's already going on. Maybe there are governments that have already cracked the secrets of quantum computing. Hopefully India is not far behind. One hopes so. So I think it's we are on the cusp of multiple revolutionary changes. We are already seeing the AI revolution. These are text generator AIs, image generator AIs. We are now seeing music generation and some kind of video generation, which is actually kind of creepy right now. But it will work out eventually in a few years. But that's what's visible to the public. What's behind the scenes is who knows to what level it is already reached. So we have the AI revolution, we have the quantum computing revolution. You put them together, it's going to revolutionize the world.
Everything that they've ever shown in Black Mirror will be possible in the next 20 years, within the next 20 years.
Possibly.
What about the kind of stuff they've shown in Interstellar, where they talk about wormholes, time travel, as well as long-ass space travel? As of now, I think the long-ass space travel is the most likely. In the last podcast, we spoke about nuclear fusion and how, we're almost kind of figuring that that's the other big scientific story at play. Lots of people are working on understanding how to control nuclear fusion. Combine that with quantum computing. Say if quantum computing is figured earlier, it will tell you how to control nuclear fusion.
Oh, definitely.
Because you'll be able to understand how nuclear fusion can be controlled within a computer.
Yes.
Once you figure nuclear fusion, you figure long-ass space travel. I also believe that when it comes to wormholes and time travel, it's all theoretically possible. In the same way that once upon a time, atom bombs were theoretically possible.
Right.
And then they worked upon the engineering of it. But that working upon the engineering of it phase took a while, which may not take too long when an AI is combined with a quantum computer.
Right. You'll be able to simulate all of that in the computer, which will tell you how to do it.
Are you going to see an inflection point when it comes to the story of science and suddenly open up to the possibilities of science fiction?
I think it's a very real possibility. We saw such an inflection point at the beginning of the 20th century with the quantum revolution, when we discovered quantum mechanics, and then a whole set of technologies emerged very rapidly, without which the world that we live in today would not be possible. None of this would be possible without the quantum technologies. We may be on the cusp of a new inflection point. We could see AI, we could see quantum computing, we could see nuclear fusion, we could see incredible advances in space travel and whatnot. All of this could suddenly be triggered off in this decade, possibly. It could happen.
Okay. One last kind of phase of this episode is speaking about alien life.
Okay.
Because the American government announced all that stuff recently about like aliens and UFOs, which we spoke about in the Oppenheimer episode. You want to give a tiny recap in a few sentences about what this alien announcement was? And this is being recorded, I think, on 1st August. It's 1st August.
1st August today.
So one tiny recap.
So the US government recently announced, held some kind of a disclosure kind of event in which a number of former US government personnel came out in public and testified on record, sworn testimony, that the US government is in possession of various alien artifacts and also non-human biologics. That's the kind of term that they used. So when they talk about alien artifacts, one could only imagine either entirely intact spacecraft or crashed spacecraft and bits and pieces of that. And when it comes to non-human biologics, it's a very vague term. It could also mean grass or mushrooms or fruits or alien individuals, either alive or no longer alive. So that's the kind of statement, that's the kind of disclosure they have made, but they have provided no evidence to back up the words that they have offered to the world. So right now we are at the stage where the US government has released certain pieces of video footage over the past 2-3 years, in which they are saying that their fighter planes were pursued by UFOs, UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. They were either chased by that, or they themselves chased those phenomena and they were not able to figure out what that was. And now they are making the disclosure that the US government is aware of these alien visitations and they are in possession of various alien spacecraft artifacts. But thus far, no evidence, hard evidence has been forthcoming. So thus far, I am skeptical. When I see hard evidence, I'll believe it. But I would be very happy if it were true.
Okay, let's kind of put backward logic on this. So say they've found a UFO. That means that some beings from at least another planet in our solar system have figured out how to do interplanetary travel and then come to Earth. And if they're not from our solar system, they're from another solar system, which means they've done inter-solar system travel. So they've figured some heavy level of technology, which very likely means that they've figured quantum computing already.
Most likely, yes.
Why most likely?
Because the kind of advances in technology would need very powerful simulations in computers to develop the kind of the craft that you need, the propulsion technology that you need. Maybe it's ion propulsion, or maybe nuclear propulsion, or something in between, maybe antimatter propulsion. Whatever it is, it's a very futuristic technology, the kind of technology we don't have today. The only technology we have today is chemical rockets, which is a very rudimentary technology. So they would need something which is orders of magnitude more powerful and more effective, efficient than chemical rockets, because your chemical fuel you'll run out of it eventually. Another thing we could use is light sail technology, which is kind of going back to the age of sailing on having ships with sails. But to have interstellar travel, you need a better technology, and to be able to devise and construct that, you probably would need a very powerful computer to be able to simulate those things. So most likely, if they have such technology, they may have extremely powerful quantum computers.
We are talking about quantum technology being developed in the next 10 to 20 years. Even if this alien race is 500 years older than us, which is not too long in the macro scale of things when you compare to the universe. That means possibly in another 500 years, if we survive as a race, we'll be the aliens for some other rudimentary civilization.
Definitely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that while this announcement has been done by the American government or former government officials, if truly we have found alien artifacts, or if there's been human-alien interaction, maybe the aliens are benevolent, like good. Maybe they're bad. So either they're like Jadoo, like who's that Silver Surfer villain? Galactus? Whatever, one of these Marvel villains. Thanos. So either they're like Jadoo, they're like Thanos, or they're somewhere in the middle. They're grey. I would probably think they're somewhere in the middle.
See, if aliens have actually come here, they have visited us, maybe they're among us, and we are still here, it means that they're not going to kill us. Otherwise, they would have done it by now. So maybe they have good intentions for us. If they actually have indeed visited planet Earth and they have not destroyed it thus far, then it means that we should not fear them.
It's our version of going to safaris and saying, hey, look at those lions, they're so cute. They're probably doing that to us right now. Like scanning everything, and we are like a global safari for them.
Right, yes.
But they've figured that don't mess with these people too much. You can interfere in a lion's life. If a lion is super unwell, you sedate it and give it medicine and make it better.
Yeah.
Maybe some version of that is happening to us as we speak.
Maybe some version of that.
Okay. Maybe they will hand over the technology to the US government officials at some point, saying that you want to figure quantum computing? Take.
Maybe. I mean, do we hand over technology to lions? I'm not sure that lions are capable of handling our technology. Right. We don't even know how to talk to lions. See, let's say you're a dog or a cat. How do you communicate? You communicate in your own language and the dog understands what you say. Dogs typically understand our speech. And cats pretend not to, but they also understand our speech. But we never try to understand the dog's language. We never try barking and seeing what it means. So, if aliens come to us, I suppose they would not take the trouble to try and figure out how we talk. They'll talk to us and hope that we will pick up some of it. That's what I would imagine it would be like.
Are we becoming smarter as a race? We probably are.
Over time, I hope one evolves in a positive direction and becomes overall smarter. I hope so.
Okay, because technology is definitely evolving.
Technology is evolving very fast, but if you look at the progression of the human species over the past 300,000 years, I think we have developed better and better technology over time. And in the past 100 or so years, it's been like an inflection point, and maybe we are at the cusp of another one as well. So maybe it's possible that our technology may kind of outpace us and grow so fast that we may be left behind. And the nightmare scenario of Terminator, like you end up creating a super intelligence which actually becomes self-aware and then gets a mind of its own and then makes its own choices, and then maybe it decides we are no longer needed. So yeah, who knows? That may also happen if we are not careful.
Okay. One last thing I want to highlight actually in this podcast is again Michio Kaku. And I highly recommend everyone go check out his episodes with Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss. Incredible podcasts. Both Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss asked him, other than quantum computing, what is the other technology that you're extremely excited about? He said that maybe it's not a technology as much as it's an area of research, which is this whole genome project where they're trying to map out the DNA sequence of human beings. But he said that once we finish the genome project completely, the next project will be trying to map out a human brain completely, all the neural connections. Now, I'm assuming that within a quantum computer, if you're able to actually simulate a universe, it's very easy to kind of create just a false human brain.
Interesting. I suppose it should be possible to do that. See, as far as we know, in the entire known universe, the human brain is the most complex machine that exists anywhere. Right?
And it's still a part of our universe itself.
Yes. So I think it could be kind of a challenge even for a quantum computer to kind of replicate the kind of brain that we have. We may be able to make it trace out the path of the evolution of a brain from a very primitive tadpole-like brain into something of a higher animal kind of thing. And it may give us very interesting and surprising results. But to exactly replicate what a human brain is like may kind of be a challenge even for a quantum computer. That's what I think. I think it will be able to kind of draw out a path of how the human brain evolution would happen, or a typical brain evolution would happen. So let's say you have a bunch of neurons, you put them together, and that's a very primitive rudimentary brain, the kind of brain that you have in a tardigrade or a very primitive animal. And then you ask the quantum computer to try out all the iterations and see how this brain would evolve over, let's say, 10 million generations. Let's see how it evolves. What things are added to it. Let's say you have sense organs that you attach to the brain, then how will the brain evolve? So maybe it may be able to throw out different versions of how brains would evolve. But would it be able to replicate exactly what a human brain is like? I am not sure. Possibly it may happen. But what I would be interested in really would be understanding what consciousness is. Does consciousness actually emerge out of the human brain, out of the complexity of the brain, or is it something else entirely? That's a hugely nebulous and vague subject. We don't even have a definition of what consciousness actually is. So if we can harness the power of quantum computing, will it throw some light on what consciousness is? That's something that I would be very interested to know.
That's the one thing that no scientist has been able to explain.
Oh, absolutely.
What is consciousness?
Yes.
And everyone has their own definition of it.
Yeah.
One way of looking at it is effectively your brain is in charge of anything that's happening in your body, anything that you're thinking, anything that you're feeling. It's definitely in charge of the emotions that you are feeling. Right? So if you're feeling sad on a certain day, it's because your brain is probably doing something to make you feel that. It's telling your body, release this hormone. I'm not feeling so good. Or if there's a death of a loved one, that input goes into your brain, it becomes a memory. That memory releases cortisol, reduces the reduction of dopamine, etc. So it's a combination of electrical signals, that massive circuit that's your brain, as well as some triggers to release hormones, which further then play on the brain, etc.
Yes,
It's a complex machine, which I'm also struggling to explain.
Yeah.
I personally feel what's dangerous is that if you're able to create a brain inside a computer and you're able to put electricity into it and you're able to put the data of the entire internet into it, which is where it gets dangerous. And then that brain develops emotions. Emotions possibly could create wishes, and wishes could be, hey, I feel like destroying my master and taking over the earth now and running it my way.
So as long as the brain that we are talking about is merely a simulation inside the machine, it's fine. But if you give it kinetic assets like arms and legs or control over real world things, that's where the trouble starts. That's where the danger signals begin. So as long as it's just a simulation with emotions or whatever, it's just a simulation. It's a collection of atoms within the computer. Once you give it access to the external world through various sense organs, or you give it kinetic access, that's where it could actually start making a real world difference. So that's the line maybe we should not cross.
Is quantum computing combined with AI the closest we get to any of these apocalyptic sci-fi movies?
Most likely, yes.
This is where we should actually be a little afraid.
Oh, very much.
Okay.
Yes.
What is your final bottom line for this episode?
My bottom line is that we are at possibly an inflection point. Maybe we are going to see the unleashing of very interesting, very powerful technology that may change the world forever. It may obviously place a huge amount of power in the hands of a very few people, maybe one or two governments, which could not be a good thing for the world. But if we use it like any technology, if we use it for the betterment of humankind, it could really change the world for the better. It could eradicate all kinds of illnesses and diseases. It could cure cancer. It could cure dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. It could make our lives healthier, longer, give us better technology, maybe solve world hunger, maybe help us travel to different planets. The possibilities are endless, but like every technology, it's a double-edged sword. It depends on how we use it.
As a scientist, a geopolitical observer, and a bit of an engineer, do you think everything that you've said can happen in the next 50 years?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I think nuclear fusion will happen in the next 10 to 20 years for sure. We may have fusion reactors. Space traveling to the moon, traveling to Mars will definitely happen in the next 50 years, maybe the next 20 years. Maybe high quality quantum computers which can do calculations with high fidelity without breaking down. That may actually already be happening under wraps. So I think everything we discussed could definitely happen within the next 50 years. I'm not sure about the alien part, but apart from that, everything else.
Okay. Good luck, humanity. Just don't blow yourself up. Hopefully this is sent out into space 100 years later as a little memory of what humanity used to be.
Used to be like. before everything changed.
My God. If I ever have the money to, I'll definitely send out a time capsule into space and put this episode in there in case my grandkids pass away because of a nuclear winter. Abhijit Chavda, sir, thank you so much for this once again morbid episode. It was extremely enlightening. I hope we did justice to the topic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That was the episode for today. Another legendary episode with AC. I'm going to link all our old AC episodes down below. If this is the first time you're watching TRS, that's a little weird. I don't understand how you've not seen any of the other AC videos that we've created on the show. We also have an epic Hindi podcast where we've done a bunch of epic conversations with this epic human being. Please go check those out as well. TRS will be back soon. We'll be deep diving into topics. I'm going to be as excited. I'm going to chase the happiness through curiosity because we on TRS, baby. Special thanks to Abhijit Chavda. Special thanks to you guys. Lots of love. I'm out.